The Universal Combat Training Facility orbited a dying red star, and if you asked anyone who'd been stationed there longer than a cycle, they'd tell you the star wasn't the only thing dying. Morale, hope, and occasionally trainees who didn't follow instructions. I'm Velkreen, Senior Combat Instructor for the Galactic Defense Coalition, and I've seen approximately 4,000 species try their hand at becoming soldiers. Most fail, some spectacularly. The humans? Well, let me tell you about the human. Her name was Mara Kincaid, and she walked into my training bay on a Tuesday. Yes, humans measure time in such absurd increments. Days, weeks, months. Why not just use standard galactic rotations, like civilized beings? But I digress. "You're the human?" I asked, my 3 eyes scanning her up and down. She was small, laughably small. Her species averaged about 1.7 meters, which meant she came up to roughly my midsection. I'm a thoraxian, built like what humans apparently call a tank, with exoskeleton plating that could stop most kinetic weapons. "Last time I checked," she replied, and I swear by the ancient voids, she was smiling. Not a polite smile. A knowing smile. The kind of smile that suggested she was in on a joke nobody else had heard yet. "Weapons check," I said, activating the security scanner. Standard procedure. The beam swept over her from head to toe, analyzing every molecule. "The rules are simple, trainee. No weapons allowed in the combat scenarios. We provide standardized equipment to ensure fair assessment." She raised her hands, palms out. "Good thing my hands qualify as weapons, then." I blinked. All 3 eyes, one after another. "Excuse me?" "Oh, nothing," Mara said, still wearing that insufferable grin. "Just making conversation." The scanner beeped. Clean. No plasma pistols, no molecular disruptors, no graviton blades. Not even a simple kinetic slug thrower. She was completely unarmed, wearing only the standard gray training suit we issued to all recruits. Perfect. "Welcome to hell, human," I said, gesturing toward the training arena with one of my 4 arms. "You'll be facing 3 scenarios today. Survive them, and we'll talk about whether your species has any business joining the coalition military. Fail, and you can return to your little blue planet and tell them the galaxy isn't as friendly as your entertainment broadcasts suggest." "Sounds fun," she said, cracking her knuckles. The sound made me wince. Human joints were disturbingly noisy. The first scenario was simple. A hostage situation. 3 holographic terrorists, simulated to fight with 60% lethality settings, holding 2 civilians in a mock cargo bay. Most species tried to negotiate. The smart ones created distractions. The violent ones, and there were many, simply charged in and got themselves killed. I watched from the observation deck, mandibles clicking in what passed for anticipation among my kind. Beside me stood Quirnax, a Velocian, whose species resembled what humans might call an octopus with authority issues. His tentacles twitched as the scenario loaded. "Another human," he gurgled through his translation device. "How delightful. The last one cried within the first 15 minutes. "They're emotionally volatile," I agreed. "Interesting species, though. They've survived remarkably hostile conditions on their home world. Predators, diseases, each other. Surviving and fighting are different skills." Indeed. The scenario began. Mara entered the cargo bay slowly, hands visible, body language non-threatening. Good start. The holographic terrorists, modeled after Corinthian raiders, immediately trained their weapons on her. "Stop!" the lead terrorist shouted, the translator rendering his aggressive pheromone signature into verbal hostility. "Another step, and the hostages die." Okay, Mara said, stopping. Let's all stay calm. Nobody needs to die today. I leaned forward. Was she actually going to negotiate? How boring. Your weapons, the terrorist demanded. Surrender them. Don't have any, Mara said, showing her empty hands again. See, just meat. The terrorist leader seemed confused. His holographic programming probably hadn't accounted for someone showing up completely unarmed. You're a soldier. Where are your weapons? Left them at home, she said, taking a casual step forward. Forgot it was Weapons Day. You know how it is. Wake up late, skip breakfast, forget your plasma rifle. Classic mistake. Another step. Stay back, the terrorist shouted. But there was hesitation in his voice now. The program was adapting, uncertain how to process this bizarre tactic. Listen, Mara continued, her voice conversational, friendly even. I get it. You're angry. The universe hasn't treated you fairly. Maybe you've got legitimate grievances. But these hostages, they're not responsible for your problems. Step. I'm warning you, human. And I'm listening, she said. But here's the thing. She smiled again. I'm still walking. The terrorist fired. A training bolt, calibrated to stun but still painful as hell, screamed toward her center mass. Any normal being would have been knocked unconscious. Mara's hand moved. Not fast by some species' standards. The Skrillex could move at speeds human eyes couldn't track. The Fentari could literally teleport short distances. But humans? They had something different. Something I was about to learn to respect, and, frankly, fear. She caught the bolt. Not with a shield. Not with armor. With her bare hand. The energy dispersed around her fingers, grounding harmlessly through her body. Her smile never wavered. Did you just... Quirnax's tentacles went rigid with shock. She caught it, I whispered. By the ancestors, she caught it. Before the terrorist could fire again, Mara moved. She closed the distance in 3 strides, faster than the hologram's reaction programming could compensate for. Her hand struck the terrorist's weapon arm, and even through the holographic rendering, I heard something snap. The gun clattered away. The second terrorist swung his rifle toward her. She ducked under it, spun, and her elbow connected with his midsection. The impact sent him stumbling backward into a cargo container. He didn't get up. The third terrorist, showing more intelligence than his companions, released his hostage and tried to run. Mara's leg swept out, catching his ankles. He went down hard. She was on him in an instant, one knee pinning his back, her hand pressing his face against the deck. Scenario complete, the computer announced. Time, 47 seconds. Hostages, unharmed. Casualties, 0. Efficiency rating, exceptional. The holograms dissolved. Mara stood, dusted off her training suit, and looked up at the observation window. She couldn't see us through the one-way glass, but somehow I felt like she knew exactly where I was standing. She waved. What in the 7 hells was that? Quirnax demanded. That, I said slowly, was a human being unarmed. I'm beginning to understand why their species classified themselves as their own planet's apex predator. But she had no weapons. How did she overpower 3 armed combatants? Because, I said, remembering her words, her hands qualify. The second scenario was supposed to be harder. A maze filled with automated turrets, pressure plates, laser grids, and various other lethal obstacles. Most trainees took between 20 and 40 minutes to navigate it, assuming they survived. The record was held by a Zenthari shadow dancer at 8 minutes, 12 seconds. Mara studied the entrance for approximately 5 seconds, then walked in. The first turret activated, tracking her movement. She grabbed a piece of debris from the floor and threw it at the sensor. The targeting system locked onto the faster-moving object, wasted its charge, and went into cooldown. She walked past. "Lucky throw," Quirnax muttered. The second turret had no debris nearby. She simply ran at it in a zigzag pattern, moving unpredictably. The targeting computer couldn't get a lock. When she got close enough, she jumped, grabbed the turret mount, and yanked. The entire assembly tore free from the wall. She used it as a club to destroy the next 3 turrets. "Those are bolted to reinforced plating," Quirnax protested. "Human muscle density is significantly higher than it appears," I noted, checking her species file on my datapad. "Their bones are designed to withstand tremendous force, and their muscles generate power through a chemical process that can temporarily increase strength during stress. They call it adrenaline." "That's cheating." "No, that's biology." She reached the laser grid. Most species tried to carefully time their movements between the beams. Mara studied it for a moment, then picked up a large metal panel from a destroyed turret. She used it as a shield, simply walking through the lasers. The beams scorched the metal, but didn't penetrate. "Time to completion," the computer announced. 4 minutes, 18 seconds. New facility record." Quirinax made a gurgling sound that his translator didn't even attempt to convert. "One scenario left," I said, though my confidence was beginning to waver. "Let's see how she handles actual opponents." The third scenario was the nightmare. 6 combat drones, military grade, each programmed with the fighting styles of different coalition species. They could coordinate, adapt, and they hit hard. Even with weapons, most trainees barely survived. Many didn't. Mara entered the arena. The drones activated, forming a circle around her. Red targeting lasers painted her body from 6 different angles. "Commencing combat assessment," the computer announced. "Lethal force authorized. Medical team standing by." The first drone attacked, coming in fast, with a blade extension designed to mimic Corinthian combat techniques. Mara sidestepped, grabbed its arm, and used its momentum to throw it into a second drone. Both crashed to the ground in a tangle of metal limbs. The third drone fired from range, launching stun bolts. She rolled behind a barrier, came up running, closed the distance before it could recharge. Her fist struck its central processor. Sparks flew. The drone collapsed. "Impossible," Quirinax breathed. "Those are military drones. They cost more than most ships." 2 drones attacked simultaneously from opposite sides. She dropped flat, and they collided where her head had been. While they were recovering, she swept the legs from under one, then used her knee to cave in the other's sensor array. The remaining 2 drones hesitated. Actual hesitation, as their learning algorithms processed this unprecedented threat. Then they attacked together, coordinated, no holds barred. And Mara laughed, actually laughed, as she ducked, weaved, struck, and dismantled them with nothing but her hands and feet. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't graceful. It was brutal, efficient, and terrifying. Within 2 minutes, 6 military-grade combat drones lay scattered across the arena floor, sparking and broken. Mara stood in the center of the carnage, breathing hard but still standing. She looked up at the observation window again and gave a small salute. "Assessment complete," the computer said. "Overall performance, unprecedented. Recommendation, immediate advancement to specialized operations training." Quirinax turned to me, all 8 of his tentacles quivering. "How?" I stared at the human. This small, fragile-looking creature, who'd just demolished everything we'd thrown at her without a single weapon. Because we made a fundamental error in our assessment. What error? We assumed that being unarmed made her less dangerous, I said quietly. We forgot that humans spent millions of years as persistence hunters. They chased their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They fought predators with rocks and sticks. They survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. They didn't evolve with natural weapons like claws or fangs or venom. I paused, watching as Mara exited the arena. They evolved to make weapons out of everything they touch, including themselves. Later, in my office, I had Mara sit across from my desk. She looked remarkably relaxed for someone who'd just broken facility records and several million credits worth of equipment. "So," I said, pulling up her file, "your military history is extensive." 10 years, various assignments, she confirmed. "It says here you specialized in hand-to-hand combat instruction, among other things. And before that, you studied something called mixed martial arts for 15 years, starting at age 5. She nodded. "My parents thought I should know how to defend myself." "Defend yourself," I repeated. "Against what exactly? Are humans commonly attacked on your world?" "Sometimes," she said with a shrug, "but mostly they wanted me to have discipline, focus, and respect for the power of violence. Understanding how to hurt someone teaches you restraint. At least, it should." I clicked my mandibles thoughtfully. "You know, when I saw your species had applied to the Coalition military, I thought it was arrogance. You're newcomers to galactic society. Your technology is generations behind most member species. Your physical attributes are average at best. No natural armor, no enhanced senses, relatively short lifespans." "But," she prompted, "but I didn't account for what you lack in natural advantages. You make up for in sheer, stubborn determination and creativity. The way you think about problems is fundamentally different from most species." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation," I said. "One that's making me reconsider several things." She leaned back in her chair. "Look, I'm not here to prove humans are better than anyone else. We're not. But we've been fighting since before we climbed down from the trees. It's wired into our DNA. The question isn't whether we can fight. It's whether we can fight for something worth fighting for. And the Coalition is worth fighting for? From what I've seen, yes, you've got a good thing here. Different species working together, protecting each other, building something bigger than any one civilization could manage alone. That's worth defending." I studied her for a long moment. "You realize that after today's performance, every instructor in this facility will be analyzing the recordings, trying to figure out how to counter human combat techniques." Mara smiled that knowing smile again. "Good luck with that. We've been trying to counter ourselves for thousands of years. Still haven't figured it out." "Why not?" "Because every time someone develops a perfect defense, someone else invents a new attack. It's an arms race that never ends. We adapt, evolve, and overcome. It's what we do best." I made my decision. "Report to advanced training tomorrow. 600 hours. You'll be working with special operations candidates." "Seriously?" "Your performance today was exceptional. Disturbing, but exceptional. The Coalition needs soldiers who can think on their feet and turn disadvantages into advantages. You've demonstrated both skills admirably." She stood, extending her hand in that strange human gesture of greeting and farewell. I clasped it with one of my own hands, surprised by the strength of her grip. "Thank you, instructor," she said. Don't thank me yet, I replied. Advanced training is significantly harder. You'll be facing opponents who know exactly what humans are capable of now. Even better, she said. I work best when people underestimate me. After she left, Quirnax oozed into my office, still looking shaken. Are you certain this is wise? He asked. Humans are unpredictable. All the best warriors are, I said, closing Mara's file. Besides, would you rather have them fighting with us or against us? With us, obviously. Then we train them, learn from them, and hope that their capacity for violence is matched by their capacity for loyalty. And if it's not? I thought about Mara, dismantling those combat drones with nothing but determination and her bare hands. Then, the galaxy has a much bigger problem than the Corinthian raiders or the Zenthari incursions. Quirnax shuddered, his entire body rippling with unease. I need to update the training protocols. Make it comprehensive, I said. Something tells me she won't be the last human we see. And I was right. Within 3 cycles, 6 more humans arrived at the facility, then 12, then 30. Word had spread through Earth's military that the Coalition was recruiting, and apparently humans loved a challenge. Each one was different. Some were large and strong, others were small and fast. Some were young, barely out of adolescence by human standards. Others were older, carrying themselves with the quiet confidence of veterans. But they all shared something. That spark. That absolute refusal to quit, even when logic suggested they should. We had to redesign half our training scenarios. The humans kept breaking them, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through creativity, stubbornness, and a disturbing willingness to endure pain that would incapacitate most species. They turned obstacles into weapons, weaknesses into strengths, and impossible scenarios into merely difficult ones. And Mara? She became one of our best instructors. Turns out, teaching other species how to fight like humans was even more effective than fighting like a human herself. She had a gift for breaking down complex combat techniques into understandable components, for finding each species' natural advantages and exploiting them. But sometimes, late at night, I'd find her in the training arena, practicing alone, moving through forms and techniques with a precision that suggested they were as natural as breathing. And I'd remember her words from that first day. Good thing my hands qualify. She'd been joking, but the joke concealed a deeper truth. Humans didn't need weapons to be dangerous. They were born dangerous, shaped by millions of years of survival, in an environment that tried constantly to kill them. They'd learned to fight with everything they had, and when they had nothing, they learned to make something out of nothing. The galaxy would never be quite the same after humanity joined the Coalition. Some species complained, others worried. A few even talked about limiting human involvement in military operations. But when the Corinthian Empire launched a surprise attack on the Outer Rim colonies, and the Coalition scrambled to respond, nobody complained about the 300 human soldiers who volunteered for the counteroffensive. And when those 300 humans helped turn a potential massacre into a Coalition victory, using tactics that no strategist had ever considered, because those tactics were absolutely insane by any civilized standard, well, after that, the complaints stopped, because the galaxy learned what Mara had tried to tell me that first day. You don't need weapons to be deadly. You just need the will to fight, the intelligence to adapt, and the sheer bloody-minded stubbornness to never, ever give up. Humans had all 3 in abundance, and now so did the Coalition. 3 months after Mara Kincaid shattered every preconception I had about unarmed combat, I found myself standing in the command center of the GCS Vanguard, watching a situation spiral completely out of control. "Report!" Admiral Threxus demanded, his scales rippling with agitation. The Saurian commander had seen action in 40 campaigns, survived 3 assassination attempts, and once stared down an entire pirate fleet with nothing but a damaged frigate and pure spite. Right now, he looked genuinely worried. "Hostage situation on Station Meridian 7, the communications officer reported, her antenna twitching nervously. Approximately 200 civilians held by an extremist faction calling themselves the Void Reapers. They're demanding recognition as an independent government, complete withdrawal of coalition forces from the Tertian sector, and a ship capable of deep space travel. Demands we obviously cannot meet," Threxus growled. "Military options?" "Limited," Tactical replied. "The station's environmental systems are compromised. Any breach could kill everyone aboard. They've also rigged the fusion reactor with explosives. One wrong move and half the sector disappears in a fireball. Negotiation status? Failed. They executed 3 hostages an hour ago to prove they're serious." The command center fell silent. I watched the tactical display, my mind's working through scenarios. All of them ended badly. "We have one option," a voice said from the back of the room. Everyone turned. Mara stood there, still wearing her training instructor uniform, somehow having talked her way onto the bridge of a capital ship during a crisis situation. Typical human behavior. "And what option would that be, instructor?" Threxus asked, his tone suggesting he was about 2 seconds from having her removed. "Send me in." The Admiral's laugh was harsh. "One soldier? Against an entrenched position with hundreds of hostages and an unknown number of terrorists? Have you lost your mind?" "Probably," Mara admitted. "But here's the thing. They're scanning for weapons, right? Standard security protocols. Anyone approaching with firearms, explosives, energy weapons gets flagged immediately." "Correct. So send someone who doesn't need weapons." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. "Admiral, I've seen what she can do. It's unsettling." "Unsettling doesn't win battles, Instructor Velkrin." "No, but she does," I said. "Every time. In ways that make absolutely no sense until after she's already won." Threxus studied Mara for a long moment. "You understand the risk. You'll be completely alone. No backup, no extraction team, no weapons. If you fail, you die. Probably slowly." "I understand. And you still volunteer?" "Those are 200 innocent people, sir. Someone has to try." The Admiral's tail swished back and forth, a sign of deep thought among his species. Finally, he nodded. "Very well, but you're taking an observer. Someone who can report back if this goes wrong. Velkrin, that's you." "Me?" My mandibles clicked in surprise. "Sir, I'm an instructor, not a field operative." "Which makes you perfect. You won't get in her way, and you know enough about combat to provide useful intelligence. Besides, you seem confident in her abilities. Time to prove it." 2 hours later, I found myself stuffed into a maintenance pod next to Mara, hurtling toward Station Meridian 7 while questioning every decision that had led to this moment. "Nervous?" Mara asked, checking her equipment, which consisted of absolutely nothing except the standard utility suit and a small medical kit. "Terrified," I admitted. "You realize this is suicide?" "Only if we die," she said cheerfully. "Otherwise, it's just a really dangerous mission." "That's not reassuring." "Wasn't trying to be reassuring. Was trying to be accurate." The pod docked with a maintenance airlock on the station's lower level. According to intelligence, The Void Reapers were concentrated on the main habitat levels, with hostages held in the central plaza. We had maybe an hour before they executed more prisoners. The airlock cycled. We entered a dimly lit corridor that smelled of recycled air and fear. "Scanner check," Mara whispered into her comm unit, barely audible. "You're clean," Tactical responded. "No weapons detected. The Reapers aren't even watching that section. They think it's too damaged to be accessible." "Perfect. Velkrin and I are moving to the access shafts. We'll approach from above." "Negative," Tactical replied. "Those shafts are too narrow for someone of Instructor Velkrin's size." Mara looked at me. I looked at my forearms and broad thorax, then at the access shaft entrance. She was right. I'd never fit. "Change of plans," she said. "Velkrin, you're my eyes. Find a vantage point where you can observe the plaza and feed me information. Stay hidden. If this goes wrong, you report everything to the Admiral." "And what will you be doing?" "Creating chaos. It's a human specialty." Before I could argue, she was gone, disappearing into the access shaft with disturbing ease. I made my way to an observation point overlooking the central plaza, using maintenance catwalks that groaned under my weight. What I saw made my blood run cold. 200 hostages sat in organized rows, zip-tied and terrified. 36 Void Reapers, I counted them twice, patrolled with military precision. They carried high-grade weapons, wore body armor, and moved like trained soldiers, not desperate extremists. "Mara," I whispered into my comm, "these aren't fanatics. They're professionals, former military, probably mercenaries. This is a planned operation, not a desperate political statement." "Suspected as much," her voice crackled back. "The demands were too specific, too calculated. Someone's using the hostages as leverage for something bigger. Question is, what? Does it matter?" "Always matters. Understanding motivation tells you how they'll react when plans go wrong." I watched one of the Reapers check his chronometer for the third time in 5 minutes. "They're waiting for something. They keep checking the time." "A ship, maybe? Or a signal?" "Unknown. But they're nervous. Professional, but nervous." "Good. Nervous people make mistakes. Stand by, I'm in position above the plaza. Count of 3, I'm dropping in. When I do, things will get loud. That's when you need to move." "Move where?" "The reactor room. Someone needs to disarm those explosives, and I'm going to be busy." "I'm not a demolitions expert." "Neither am I, but someone at Tactical is. They'll walk you through it. Now stop arguing and get ready." I wanted to protest more, but she had already started her countdown. 3. The plaza remained unchanged. Hostages sitting, guards patrolling. Nothing suggested the absolute chaos about to unfold. 2. One of the Reapers walked directly beneath my position. He had no idea what was coming. None of them did. 1. Mara dropped from the ceiling vent like a vengeful spirit. She landed on the first Reaper, using his body to break her fall. He went down hard, unconscious before he hit the ground. His rifle clattered away. Mara rolled, came up running, closed the distance to the second guard before anyone could react. Her elbow struck his throat. He dropped, gasping. The third guard managed to raise his weapon. Mara grabbed the barrel, twisted it up and away, used her knee to break his grip. The rifle discharged into the ceiling. Alarms began screaming. Now everyone was aware of her. 34 armed mercenaries versus 1 unarmed human. They opened fire. Mara moved like water, flowing between bullets that should have cut her down. She used the panicking hostages as cover, staying low, never stopping. A reaper stepped into her path. She swept his legs, grabbed his weapon as he fell, smashed it into the face of another approaching guard. "Velkrin!" Her voice shouted through the comm amid the chaos. "Move now!" I moved, abandoning my vantage point and heading toward the reactor level. Behind me, the sounds of combat echoed through the station. Screams, gunfire, and something that might have been Mara laughing. That human was genuinely insane. The reactor level was supposed to be guarded, but the explosions and alarms had drawn most of the Reapers toward the plaza. I encountered only 2 guards. I'm not a fighter, but I'm substantially larger than most species. I simply charged them. They went down under my mass, unconscious from the impact. "I'm at the reactor," I reported, staring at the massive explosives wired to the fusion core. "And I have no idea what I'm looking at." "Patching you through to Lieutenant Ferris," Tactical responded. "He specializes in demolitions." A new voice came through, calm and professional. "Okay, instructor, describe what you see." I did, in as much detail as my panicked brain could manage. "Right," Ferris said. "Those are Grendel pattern charges, old military hardware. The good news is they're predictable. The bad news is there's a dead man switch. Cut the wrong wire, and it all goes up." "Which wire do I cut?" "None of them. You need to bypass the trigger mechanism entirely. Look for a small black box about the size of your smallest hand. Should have 3 colored inputs: blue, red, yellow." I found it, my hands trembling. Located. "Pull the yellow connector first, slowly. If you hear a beeping sound, stop immediately." I pulled. No beeping. "Done." "Good. Now, the blue one. This is the tricky part. Pull it straight out, no twisting." I pulled carefully. Still no beeping. "Last one. Red connector. When you pull this, you'll have approximately 5 seconds before the backup timer activates. You need to press the black button on top of the box within that window. Understood?" "No pressure at all," I muttered. "You've got this, instructor." I pulled the red connector, started counting. 1, 2, 3. My hand moved toward the button. 4. Pressed it. 5. The lights on the explosive array went dark. "Charges neutralized," Ferris confirmed. "Excellent work." I sagged against the reactor housing, all 4 of my arms shaking. "Never again." "Velkrin?" Mara's voice cut through. She sounded out of breath. "Status?" "Explosives disarmed. How are you doing?" "Oh, you know, living the dream." Through my comlink, I heard more gunfire, more screaming, more chaos. I made my way back toward the plaza, arriving to find a scene that defied belief. 36 professional mercenaries lay scattered across the floor. Some unconscious, some groaning in pain. All disarmed. Not one of them had been killed, I noted with surprise. Mara stood in the center of the plaza, breathing hard, bleeding from a cut above her eye, surrounded by freed hostages who stared at her like she was some kind of mythical creature, which, from their perspective, she probably was. "All clear," she reported. "Hostages secure. Suspects neutralized. Someone should probably send medical teams." Admiral Threxus's voice came through, filled with an emotion I'd never heard from him before. Respect. "How in the name of all the void did you manage that?" "Carefully," Mara said, wincing as she touched her ribs, "and with several violations of physics that I'll explain later." "Maybe." Coalition security teams swarmed the station within minutes. Medical personnel treated the hostages and, surprisingly, the unconscious mercenaries. Intelligence officers began interrogations that would eventually reveal a much larger conspiracy involving 3 corporations and a rogue coalition admiral. But that night, standing in the recovered station's command center, watching Mara receive treatment for her injuries while refusing to sit down, I finally understood something fundamental about humans. They weren't just fighters. They were protectors. Every crazy risk Mara had taken, every impossible move, every moment where she should have died, but somehow didn't, had been calculated to save lives. Not just the hostages, the mercenaries too. She could have killed them easily. Instead, she'd carefully, precisely, disabled them. Violence with purpose. Strength with restraint. "You're thinking too hard," Mara said, appearing beside me with a bandage over her eye and a medical scanner still attached to her arm. "I can hear your mandibles clicking from across the room." "I'm trying to understand how you did it," I admitted. "Did what? The fighting part? Or the not dying part?" "Both. All of it. You faced impossible odds and somehow turned them in your favor." She shrugged, then winced because apparently she'd cracked 2 ribs. "Want to know the secret?" "Desperately." Everyone expects weapons. Guns, knives, explosives, tech. They prepare for those threats, build defenses against them, train to counter them. But they forget the oldest weapon in existence, which is determination, the absolute refusal to quit, even when logic says you should. Humans spent millions of years surviving by being too stubborn to die. We passed that trait down, generation after generation. It's in our DNA, our culture, our history. We're persistence hunters, who evolved into persistence everything. That's it? Stubbornness? Stubbornness combined with adaptability, creativity, and a concerning disregard for our own safety when protecting others. We're not the strongest species, not the fastest or smartest, but we're the ones who will keep fighting long after everyone else has given up. Admiral Threxus approached, his scales showing colors that indicated high respect. "Instructor Kincaid, the Coalition owes you a tremendous debt. 200 lives saved, a conspiracy uncovered, and a message sent to anyone considering similar actions." "Just doing my job, sir." "Your job is training recruits." "Then I guess I got some overtime today." Threxus made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The Coalition Council has authorized me to offer you a position in Special Operations. Elite team, highest clearance, missions that officially never happen." Mara considered this for a moment. "Can I still teach?" "Teach?" "At the training facility. I like working with recruits, showing them they're capable of more than they think." "That's highly unusual." "So am I." The Admiral's tail swished. "Very well. Split assignment, half-time operations, half-time instruction. But understand, the missions will be dangerous." "Sir, I just fought 36 armed mercenaries with nothing but my hands and poor impulse control. I think I can handle dangerous." Over the following months, Mara's legend grew. Stories spread through Coalition space about the human who needed no weapons, who could turn any situation into an advantage, who never gave up no matter how dire circumstances became. Some stories were exaggerated. Most weren't. She trained hundreds of recruits from dozens of species, teaching them that weapons were tools, not crutches, that the real weapon was the mind, the will, the refusal to accept defeat. And when crisis situations arose, situations that conventional military doctrine couldn't solve, they sent Mara. Sometimes she succeeded spectacularly. Other times she barely survived. But she always came back, usually with hostages saved, enemies captured, and a new, impossible story to tell. Me? I returned to my regular instructor duties, though with a new perspective. I'd seen what was possible when someone refused to accept limitations, when creativity mattered more than firepower, when one determined individual could change the outcome of an entire situation. The humans kept joining the coalition military. Hundreds, then thousands, each one unique, but all sharing that core trait, that absolute stubborn refusal to quit. The galaxy noticed. Some species admired it, others feared it. Most just tried to stay on humanity's good side. Because the coalition had learned a valuable lesson, one that Mara demonstrated repeatedly. The most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't plasma or fusion or graviton technology. It's a human who's decided something is worth fighting for. And we had millions of them. 6 months after the Meridian 7 incident, I received a message from Mara. She was off-world on an assignment she couldn't discuss, but she wanted to share something. "Remember when you asked how I did it?" her recorded message said. "How I survived impossible odds with no weapons? I gave you the philosophical answer. Want the practical one?" I did, very much. Every human child learns to fight before they can fully talk. Not formal training, just play. Wrestling with siblings, roughhousing with friends. We learn to use our bodies as tools from day one. Then we study history, stories of humans who overcame impossible odds through sheer determination. We grow up knowing that we're descended from people who survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and disasters. That knowledge shapes us, makes us believe that if they could survive, so can we. Add training, experience, and a healthy dose of adrenaline, and you get someone who refuses to accept defeat. That's the secret, Velkrin. Not any special ability, just the absolute conviction that giving up isn't an option. Anyway, I'm rambling. Stay safe, keep training those recruits, and remember what I taught you. The best weapon is the one nobody expects. The message ended. I sat in my office considering her words. She was right, of course. The galaxy had spent millennia developing advanced weapons, powerful shields, devastating technologies. We'd forgotten that sometimes the simplest solution was the best one. A determined individual with the will to fight and the intelligence to adapt. No weapons required, just hands, heart, and the absolute refusal to quit. That's what humanity brought to the coalition. Not superior technology or overwhelming numbers, just an army of people too stubborn to accept defeat, creative enough to turn disadvantages into advantages, and brave enough to fight for something bigger than themselves. The galaxy would never be the same. And honestly, that was probably a good thing. Because when the next crisis came, and it always did, the coalition had humanity on its side. And humans, as Mara had proven time and time again, were very good at turning impossible situations into merely difficult ones. No weapons needed, just determination, creativity, and hands that definitely qualified.